the head?
I've never tried it before. I'll try it first.
So the end will be very nice.
Okay, hello. Okay, hi, you're watching Greg's Meat Eats, and we're here to talk about the most popular Chinese roast meat business in Singapore, 88 Hong Kong Roast Meat Specialist. Now, to be honest, I actually didn't want to do a vlog about this eatery at all. Why? Because it has been covered by the media so many times already. And I was even more reluctant to cover them because the business has expanded from 1 to 3 outlets. And in my experience, the food quality usually suffers whenever a business starts to expand. But after eating here for many years, right, I gradually started to change my mind. Because every time I eat here, I discover something new to fascinate about, some new detail that they have put effort into. Plus, whenever I read food reviews of this place here, right, I realize that none of them are exactly pinpointing why people love 88 Hong Kong Roast. On the flip side, none of the reviews ever talk about why this eatery might not be a place that you would enjoy eating at, despite all the praise that this business has been getting. Hence this vlog right now. But I'm getting ahead of myself here, so let's start from the beginning. The brains behind 88 Hong Kong Roast is Martin Ong, 50 years old in 2023. He trained as a Western chef and worked in restaurants like Jack's Place and the Canopy Cafe in Marina Bay Golf Course before switching over to do Chinese roast meats in 2012. His first location was in Tampines, and then he started shifting to different locations over the years, including to one located across the causeway in Johor Bahru. His present setup is now a flagship space in Lavender, an outlet in Tyrwhitt Road, and a brand new air-conditioned outlet in the CBD, China Street, which opened on March 15th, 2023. So come, let's have a taste. 可以给我10块叉烧啊，就有10块了，换一个。
一个晚上是好，还有什么吗？
没有那边了。
好，26块半。
Okay, so I'm back with some of their char siu. I've got some char siu with some char siu sauce on the side, their roast pork, a plate of rice, the 2 chilies that they offer, and 1 wanton soup over here. Now, before I begin, I've got a bit of a disclosure. And it is that this review is not as incognito as I had hoped. I've eaten here over the years on my own, with friends or with family, but on a couple of occasions, Martin recognized me. So he has come over to chat, we've been friendly ever since and we've had conversations about his food. Plus, on my most recent visit, he caught me taking B-roll footage for this vlog. So he knows that I'm doing a vlog about his food sometime in the future. He just doesn't know when. But that said, I will still strive to be fully critical and objective, but I will also fully understand if you are highly skeptical about my judgment because of what I've told you. So anyway, first trying their famous char siu. Okay, so this char siu is very different from the usual kind of char siu that you get at most roast meat stalls in Singapore. You see, char siu is typically made from the pig shoulder, and sometimes they use the ribs, pork ribs, sometimes they use meat near the armpit and so on and so forth. But they never ever use a pork belly. That is normally reserved for roast pork, su yok. So what Martin does here is to use the pork belly for his char siu. And that results in a char siu that is incredibly fat-rich. The seasoning is a nice balance of a medium sweetness and savouriness. Apparently it's a mix of Hong Kong and Malaysian styles of char siu. Hong Kong uses fermented bean curd and hoisin sauce, while the Malaysian style focuses more on the honey and the maltose. And even though it has a very shiny glaze on the meat, the taste is actually not as sweet as you would expect. The meat texture is pretty tender and soft, sometimes to the point of falling apart, and sometimes you taste the meat juices, but very often you don't. Instead, what you get is a lot of pork fat richness. Part of the reason why the texture is so supremely soft is because he braises the pork belly with a sweet malt sugar marinade, kind of like sous vide style. Then he slow roasts the meat for about 2 hours. And it's very well roasted with a nice charring, and that gives the taste a lot of smokiness. Finally, he pours on some of the thick char siu marinade on top for a little more flavour and juiciness. But if you would like a little bit more of the pork flavour, right, ask for it to be put on the side, like how I have done so right here, at the side. Martin claims that he is the first one to come up with pork belly char siu in Singapore, and indeed, his char siu is very innovative and unique. And his stall is incredibly popular as a result, with queues no matter whether it is a weekend or a weekday. Because of its success over the years, more and more Chinese roast meat hawkers have started to use pork belly for their char siu instead of the more traditional shoulder meat. So, the overall taste is this incredibly well-balanced, sweet, savoury taste that isn't too in your face and isn't too sweet or isn't too savoury, but is very, very fat-rich. And the meat texture is very soft. So I'm guessing that this stall is aiming for that ultimate single bite of char siu, where you eat one bite and you remember it for the rest of your life. But, and this is where people tend to forget, is that in life, things or situations rarely get better or is the best. And in reality, it's usually a case of trade-offs. And that applies to this char siu as well. Because this char siu is the best ultimate single bite of char siu, what happens is that you get satiated very, very fast. I know quite a few people who can't eat more than a few pieces of this char siu without getting very gelat of the taste. You get sick and tired of the taste. And in a sense, this is good because you don't eat too much, so you won't get fat. But it's also bad because you can't eat as much as you would like. So it depends on how you look at it. It's not good or bad. As I said, it's just a matter of trade-offs. You find the meat too rich or, heaven forbid, not rich enough, you can mitigate the richness by asking for a leaner or fatter cut. And many people don't know that you can actually ask for this. They think that pork belly is just pork belly. Char siu is just char siu. But actually, if you look at the whole piece of pork belly itself, right, there is a fattier side, and then it gradually gets leaner to its leaner side. And you can actually tweak the fattiness of the meat by being very specific in your order. Which is why I have 2 cuts of char siu right here. A lean cut, which is this one over here, and a fatty cut, this one over here. But does a leaner or fatty cut really matter much in the overall taste? Well, let's try it out, okay? First, trying the fatty cut. So, this is the ultimate fat-rich flavour bomb, and usually can't eat more than a few pieces of this. The meat tends to be a bit drier. You get less of that meat juice, you get more of a char siu bitiness, and obviously you get a lot more fat flavour. Now here is the lean cut. So basically this is the same char siu Same taste, a slightly different texture, maybe a little bit more meat juiciness, a little bit softer, but with more of a meat to fat ratio. But don't get me wrong, it is still very, very fat rich. It'll never be a lean shoulder cut. But again, here's the problem, which I know some people will have with 88 Hong Kong roast. It is that you only get one style of char siu with more or less fat. It's a great style, but it is only just one style. So you don't get the various types and textures of char siu that you get from a good Chinese roast meat stall. Let's say you wanted juicy meat with very little fat and a meaty texture, get a lean shoulder cut. Or maybe you want more of a pork flavour with more meat and sinewy texture, get the rib cut. If you want a char siu with more intramuscular fats and a bouncy meat and fat texture, get the pu qian tian, and so on and so forth. So this eatery might not appeal to people who appreciate all these different textures in their food. For that, they will have to go to a traditional Cantonese roast meat stall. But then again, at a traditional Cantonese roast meat stall, right, you don't get this ultimate fat flavour bomb char siu pork belly either. Well, at least not yet. Maybe in the future a stall will try and sell both traditional and this pork belly char siu at the same time. Next, the roast pork. Okay, crunch test. Now this is very close to being the ultimate roast pork lah. But I think it could still do with a few more tweaks. So why I like it? It's got this fantastic light biscuit crunch on the skin that is airy and almost fragile. Bite into it and it lightly shatters in your mouth. Apparently the pork bellies are air dried for at least 24 hours. And that extra drying out helps it get that airy biscuit-like crunch. Then the fat is soft, almost melting. And the meat has a softer than usual su yok texture lah. Not as soft as their char siu, it's firmer than that. All this melting fat and soft meat texture, right, is thanks to Martin's technique lah, of roasting it for almost 2 hours to break down the connective tissue. But here's why I don't like it sometimes. As with the char siu, not everybody will like a softer fat and a softer meat texture lah. Frankly, I find the texture perfectly fine here, but some people would like a little bit more of that firm juiciness lah. I mean, for me, I can appreciate it for what it is lah. But I have a bigger issue with the seasoning. Sometimes it's spot on, sometimes it's a little on the light side. Apparently Martin uses just a pinch of 5 spice powder and no fermented bean curd, and I presume some salt as well. And because of the lighter seasoning, you do taste more of the pork flavour, which is a plus point. I asked Martin about this and he said that the light seasoning is deliberate. And it has to do with the underside of the roast pork right here. Because it is the only side where you can season the pork belly, you need a lot of seasoning to penetrate such a large slab of pork. Very often that underside is too salty to eat, and sometimes hawkers will cut it off with that little bit of meat wasted. So Martin wanted to avoid that, which is why whenever you eat the underside of the roast pork at 88 Hong Kong Roast, the meat almost has a ham-like saltiness. Let's try some. You can eat it on its own and it isn't too salty. But in my opinion, right, even though the salt level varies, the roast pork flavour could still do with just a little bit more lah. It's okay with some dressed noodles or some rice with the gravy, but it's way too under-flavoured lah with just plain rice and the meat alone lah. Thankfully, you have the chilli sauces if you want to add more flavour. But before I go on to the chilli sauces, just to show you that like the char siu, they also have a fatty version of the roast pork and the leaner version of the roast pork right here. See? This one's the leaner one over here, and this one's the fatty one over here lah. So you can customize it as with the char siu. So as I said, thankfully you have the chili sauces if you want to add more flavour. You have a chicken rice chili and you have a sambal chili. Okay, first the chicken rice chili. Yeah. Ooh, quite spicy. It's got a round sourness, slight saltiness and a lot of ginger notes. Plus it's got a rougher texture with lots of chunky bits. Ginger bits, I think. Apparently the ingredients are a mix of ginger, garlic, chili padi, large chili, lime juice, salt, chicken stock and some chicken oil. It's definitely heavy on the ginger, very nice. And when eaten with the roast pork, cuts through the richness of the roast pork very nicely. Plus it adds a very nice ginger and chili notes to every bite, obviously lah. And it doesn't add too much saltiness to the overall taste. But it is spicy lah, so if you can't handle your spice right, add it in moderation. Next, the chili sambal. Very thick, earthy, deeply roasted, oil-rich savouriness with a very deep but not too bold of a dried prawn savouriness. And there's a heaviness to the oil, so you can tell that they use pork lard to make the chili sambal. And eaten with the roast pork. And that very nicely adds that much needed savouriness back into the roast pork if it's lacking. It ups the richness even more. A good and a bad thing depending on what you're looking for. Next, the rice. And yes, the rice is a highlight here. It's soft yet firm and dry. It's got a nice bouncy separation. because it has nice long grain shapes and it has that distinctive jasmine, the buttery pandan-like aroma. Thai jasmine rice. Apparently it is the Golden Phoenix brand of rice which uses Thai Hom Mali jasmine rice. If you go to the supermarket, Thai Homely Mali rice is one of the more expensive rice brands that you can buy. They also give you some of their gravy on the side. And it's a mix of soya, savouriness and sweetness. Very nice. Lastly, I got the wanton soup right over here. Okay, it's got a nice stock which is on the slightly lighter side, but it's nice because you want something light to pair with their richly dressed noodles or roast meats. It comes with some nai pai on top and some fried pork lard thrown in. Apparently the soup is made using a mix of pork bones, chicken bones, anchovies and some vegetable element in it. As for the wontons, you get per order, how many? 7 wontons inside and they look like this. Normal size with some minced pork, bangkwang inside, and get this, you see? In each one, they put a whole piece of spring onion inside. So you really get the vegetable crunch. The filling isn't as fatty as one might expect, but again it's good because the char siu is really very rich. Okay, I'm back day 2. Try some more dishes at 88 Hong Kong Roast. I've ordered a quarter of their roast duck, xia zhuang, 2 lava eggs, the nai pai with special sauce, and a portion of their noodles, and it comes with soup as well. Okay, first so trying their roast duck first. Okay, it's a good roast duck, but it's not what I would call revolutionary or innovative like their char siu or siu yok and again, the quality of the roast duck will depend on the day itself. You know, it's not always consistent, but on a good day, the salt has a soft crispness and the meat is quite juicy. Only medium large ducks are used, and that usually means that there's a decent layer of fat to keep the meat moist. Some gravy is drizzled on top. Let's see if I can get some. And that's the duck fat and juices that oozes out during the roasting process. And it is jazzed up with a light amount of seasoning and secret herb flavourings to it. Ooh. It's basically the taste of the roast duck with the duck juices and the fat juices basically seasoned a bit, and also with herbs and spices just a bit to basically enhance that basic duck flavour. It's very nice. So I taste some, I don't know, some sort of like 5-spice powder perhaps, some ginger, cinnamon, maybe some orange peel. It's secret So next, their nai pai in special sauce. Now their vegetable is a big highlight for me. Oh my god. Their nai pai is nicely blanched. It always tastes fresh and reasonably crunchy. But the best part is that they season it with these fried onions over here. It isn't factory made onions, and they actually fry it themselves. So there is this powerful onion aroma to it and the seasoning is pretty good as well. It's got a rounded saltiness and a very light sweetness. It's got a very balanced savoury and sweet flavour. Very nice. Next, their noodles, which are another big highlight here. Okay, look at this. Now these noodles are awesome. It's got a great mix of complex savouriness and a rounded sweetness, slight amount, and there's a lot of lard richness inside here. Apparently the sauce uses some oyster sauce, some first draw soy sauce, the first extraction of soy sauce, which apparently has a richer and more intense flavour. Some 100% lard oil, and apparently some sesame oil is also mixed in. Ask for some chilli and it'll add some dried prawn smokiness and chilli flavour into the mix. The noodles are also exceptionally good. They're slightly thinner than wanton noodles. It doesn't have a strong alkaline smell, I believe so. There is some, but it's not as strong as you would expect. And it's cooked to a nice firmness. Plus, it has a nice egginess as well. Apparently, Martin custom orders his noodles to have a much higher than usual egg content. And what's great also is that they give a pretty generous amount of lardons. That's all the lardons you get in one bowl. And the lardons have a very nice soft crispness. They don't actually render the pork fat all the way through. They render it to the point of crispiness, but not too much so that the lardons still have a little bit more of that pork oil inside. Very nice. Oh, and just FYI, they also give you some soup. And this should be the same soup as whenever you order wanton soup. Yeah, it's the same. Still very nice though. Next, their lava egg. Now these are those ramen style eggs. They're Chinese soy braised and they've got a molten egg center. And they're pretty well done here. With a gentle firm exterior and a soft molten center. It's seasoned with some of the gravy that they put on the rice, I suspect. Okay, finished. But before I end, I want to briefly mention which of the 3 88 Hong Kong roast meat stalls, outlets, which you should go to. Frankly, I've tried all 3 outlets and they all fare quite well. I have a tendency to go to this one right here because the meats are all roasted on site right here. At the other outlets, the meats are roasted here, then they are transported over there. So my impression is that maybe the roast meats here are a little fresher. So that was a look at 88 Hong Kong roast meat specialists. And would I travel half across Singapore to eat here? Well, as you can tell by now, right, it really depends on what you're looking for when it comes to Chinese roast meats. If you like the textural eating of traditional roast meats or want something not too fatty, then no, this stall won't appeal to you. But if you're open-minded about trying a new approach of eating Chinese char siu and roast pork, and you're chasing that ultimate single luxurious bite of char siu or siu yok, right, then 88 Hong Kong roast does that exceedingly well. I just hope that Chinese roast meat stalls don't all switch over to making just soft textured pork belly char siu because they see the success of 88 Hong Kong roast. Because there are merits to both styles of Chinese roast meats and both can exist side by side each other, like how it is existing right now actually. So hopefully it will remain that way for the foreseeable future. So thanks for watching another episode of Great Speed Eats, where I eat through the whole of Singapore. If you liked this episode, give it a like, subscribe, comment below, and turn on the notifications bell. And I'll see you in the next one for more eating. Bye bye.